Okay, welcome to Charlie's desk. So today on the desk, we have my laptop, which is plugged into my Arduino Mega, which is plugged into what's called a breadboard, which has plugged into it some wires and an ultrasonic sensor. So I'm just trying to continue where I left off with my last video. So I'll hold up an ultrasonic sensor close to it. It's kind of cute. It kind of looks like Wally's eyes, right? So it has these two little barrels, little cylinders with some mesh on the top of them, and then it's attached to a little thin blue wafer. That's the chip, and that has four little metal wire things sticking out of the bottom of it that are labeled with VCC, which is power, trig, which stands for trigger, echo, which is the one that receives the sound, and then ground. So of those four, right, numbers 1 and 4 are familiar, right? VCC and ground, that's positive and minus, right? The like two sides of a battery. And then the other two pins, which is they're called pins, right, is one is the trigger, which triggers the top sort of barrel to shoot out a sound. And then the echo one is the receiver that reads the sound, and it just measures like how long it took from shooting out the sound to receiving the sound, and that's how it guesses how far away something is. And this is what I'm going to use in my wheelchair project, right? I want one of these just trained at the ground ahead of the wheelchair, and I want it measuring a constant distance. So I just want to show how that works a little. So I'm going to zoom in to the electronics of it. So right now on the screen, it's mostly just taken up with the Arduino, which is a little microcontroller. It has a little microchip in the center, that's the actual controller, and then it's sort of surrounded by walls of these terminals where you can just plug in little DuPont wires. And I have 4 wires plugged into the Arduino, which are then plugged into what is called a breadboard. And the breadboard, how to explain a breadboard? It's kind of like a game of Battleship, right? It's just this grid that you can put in the wires, and it's great while you're prototyping because you don't have to weld things together. And then I'll just swing around. So right now this is hooked up, right? So the power is connected, and then the trigger pin, which triggers the sound to sort of shoot out, and the echo pin, which receives that sound. They're plugged into the digital communications side of the Arduino, which means that those plugs where it can go in can do pulse width modulation. Now, pulse width modulation just means that it can send and receive different sort of voltages and vary them, because that's how you control the trigger, right? You send a certain voltage to the trigger pin. You write that in your code, you send that voltage to the trigger pin, that triggers the sound, and then, it's received by the echo pin, sends it back. And so I wrote a little code and I sent it to be on this thing. And right now what it's doing is it's printing out the distance. Oh, my phone is gonna fly out of this. So what it's doing, and by printing I mean it's just telling us, it's printing out the distance, and I'll zoom in. Oh, okay. That's saying, right, it's just saying 6 point something centimeters, because I have a block that's like 6 centimeters away from the device, right, the sensor. And now if I move that block back, and then we go back to the page, how many centimeters? Now it's 14. So now it's just constantly sort of spitting out the measurements, and that's exactly what I want. So I need to set up a bunch of these on the chair, and make sort of a wire harness to reach I want at least 6, but this is the basic sort of code of it. You plug it in and it measures how far away something is. And then what you do with that measurement, you can say, oh, if this measurement is such and such, then make this thing vibrate or make this thing buzz. So this is just the first step. This is, a little object that can measure things. And now my job is to decide, okay, when you get these measurements, what do you want to happen next? So that's the next step. Enjoy. Bye.